What's up guys, Garrett with SelfTaughtDev. Today we're going to talk about motivation and how to get yourself to do what you need to do. So there's two principles we need to know before we get too deep into this. The first is the pain-pleasure principle. It's something Sigmund Freud talks about if you've ever read any of his stuff. And it's basically that there are two sources of motivation. The first is movement away from pain, and the second is movement towards pleasure. Now, the movement away from pain is a far stronger motivator than the movement towards pleasure, just because you're in pain, like that's instant, like you're hurting now, you need to do something now. Versus the movement towards pleasure, you basically just have to marshal your willpower and delay gratification for something you want in the future. So movement away from pain, far stronger motivator. That's the first thing we need to know. The second thing we need to talk about is the hedonic treadmill. And this is basically your body's internal emotional thermostat. And it's kind of like your body's like temperature gauge, right? Like if you get too hot, your body's going to sweat to try to bring your temperature back down. If you get too cold, you're going to shiver to kind of bring your temperature back up to its baseline. And you have a similar thing for your emotions. Let's switch over to paint here so I can draw this out and illustrate it for you because I like pictures, right? So let's say this is your emotional baseline, right? Like maybe you're like a 6 right now, or like 7 or 5 or 4. It doesn't matter where you are. This is just a demonstration, right? So usually in a day or a week or a month, you'll like have some good stuff happen. Maybe you get like to 7 or an 8, then some bad stuff happens. You go down to like a 5 or a 4, good stuff, bad stuff, good stuff, bad stuff. You just oscillate back and forth around this emotional baseline. Now, if you have like some good stuff happen and you start to go back down, you have more good stuff happen and you just like focus on the good stuff, you can raise your emotional baseline from like a 6 to a 7 or from like a 4 to a 5. And like, ideally, you want to raise it because, like, when you're in a higher emotional state, you're gonna have more you're gonna have access to more of the faculties in your brain and like be more resourceful. So it's better to have like a higher emotional state. You can alter your emotional baseline, but basically the hedonic treadmill is gonna try to keep you at whatever your emotional baseline is. So if it's a 6, you might have some high points, you might have some low points, but it'll try to keep you around a 6. And if you look at studies of people who've like won the lottery, right? Like when they win the lottery, they might go from like a 5 to like an 8 or a 9. But if you go back a year later and measure their happiness, they're usually back down to their emotional baseline of like a 5 or a 6. Versus if somebody gets in like a car accident and they lose the loss of their legs. If their emotional baseline is like a 5 and you ask them questions to measure their happiness, they might be at like a 1 or a 2 because they're like, I'm never going to walk again. This is horrible. But if you go back and measure their happiness a year later, they're usually back up around their emotional baseline. So maybe like a 4 or 5 or a 6. Now, if we take the hedonic treadmill and the pain pleasure principle and combine those, we can see that the best time to take action is when you're in pain, in that lower emotional state. So like, let's say life's going good, you're dating some chick, or your significant other cheats on you and breaks up with you, right? So that's like instantly, boom, you just drop off into negative emotional land and you are not happy there. And it might seem like you're gonna be there forever, but it won't. Like you'll come back up to your emotional baseline. Your emotional baseline might like switch down to like a 5 from then on, depending on how, like what happens, but like, it's still going to come back up to your emotional baseline. Now, the farther away you are, the farther down you are from this emotional baseline, or the higher up you are, and like let's say like the higher up you are, like the more motivated you are to move towards pleasure, maybe. But let's say you're down here, you're in a lot of pain, so that is a big motivation to take action and do stuff, right? So maybe you just got broken up with, use that as like motivation to go to the gym. I can't tell you like if you're a guy, I'm sure you've seen videos on Instagram of some guy and a chick together and it plays some sappy music and you're like, oh, they broke up, and then it shows him in the gym and he's just like jacked and shredded. So like definitely like use that as emotional leverage to go to the gym or like start new activities. Use that as emotional leverage to improve your life. Use that to take the path up, not the path of inactivity and just depression and non-movement, because that's the bad path. You want to take the action path that's going to improve your life. And this is kind of what I did when I was working at a job I didn't like and like wanted to get a job in code, right? Like when I first started off in the new job, like it's like, oh, I got a new job. This is cool. The novelty's great. And then as time goes on, it's kind of like, and I don't like this and I'm down in a negative emotional state. This is the horrible job. And then you have that negative emotional leverage that you can use to force yourself to like get up at 5 to study code or come home after a long day. And you're like, ooh, I could play Fortnite and that'd be a lot of fun, but then I'm going to have to go to work tomorrow and that's not going to be fun. And I'm going to every day I'm not studying is another day I have to like go back to this job that I don't like. And because of the hedonic treadmill, like you might get down here, but if you don't take action and you just suffer through it for a while, eventually your emotional baseline, maybe the same thing happens like with you, it goes back up to like a 5. and your new emotional baseline's a 5. And because this is your new emotional baseline, your body's like, okay, well, this is the new normal. So now you don't have that movement away from pain. The movement away from pain motivation is not as strong as it was when you were down here. So the big takeaway from this is to take action when the negative emotional event occurs, because that's when your motivation is going to be the highest. When that happens, don't say, I'll do it tomorrow or I'll do it next week. You need to start doing whatever your goal is right then, or whatever you see the path you see out, you need to start taking action on that path right then. And that's the big thing with like how the hedonic treadmill and the pain pleasure principle work together. Another thing is your willpower. And this, I don't have any like psychological studies to back this up. This is just kind of like something I've thought of on my own. So I don't know if like how applicable or true it is, but I like basically you have your body, and your body's like a horse, and then you also have like the buggy driver with like the psh, psh, to motivate the horse, and that the buggy driver, that's your willpower, and then the horse is like the culmination of all your habits and everything that you do during a day. I've read I forget what book it was, but it's basically like 80-90% of what you do on an average day is just habits you built up, and then only like 10% is you exerting your willpower to do like new activities or make like changes in life. Or it might be worse than that. Maybe it's like 95% habits, 5% willpower. But the thing is, like, you have a finite amount of willpower. When you wake up in the morning, it's gonna be high, which is why a lot of things recommend putting the most important tasks at the beginning of the day, because you're gonna have the willpower reserves to pull from and get yourself to focus and do those tasks, versus like let's say you're trying to go to the gym, right? Like you can go to the gym in the morning or you can go to the gym after work. But if you go to the gym after work, usually you're gonna get off work, your willpower is gonna be exhausted. Maybe you're driving home from work, you see Taco Bell on the side of the road and you're like, ooh, I'm hungry. I just had a really bad day at work. I kind of want some food. The gym, that doesn't sound too great right now. I'm gonna get Taco Bell. So you skip the gym, you get Taco Bell instead. Well, that's because you don't have the willpower anymore. You used up all your willpower at work and throughout the day. And now your body is trying to take the path of least resistance and just get quick, easy food for that glucose and dopamine spike. So just know that you got a finite amount of willpower. It's stronger in the beginning of the day, and you need to set up your actions and like what you want to get done during the day according to that. But yeah, when a negative emotional event occurs, that is the time to take action. Don't wait till the hedonic treadmill brings you back to your emotional baseline, because your emotions, like the pain, the movement away from pain, is not going to be as strong anymore, and you're going to be less likely to take that action. Also, probably the lower down you are here, the less willpower you're going to need to start taking those actions, because you want to move away from the pain, right? Yeah, I just want to share that with you guys. That's a little bit of my view on life and like how I kind of get myself to take action and do things. I mean, I can't tell you how many like new PRs I've hit in the gym just because like some girl does something, and you can just use that as like the best pre-workout ever. It's great. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, anything like that, let me know in the comments down below. I know this wasn't really tech related, but if you do want to come talk tech with me or some other developers, come hop in Discord. Link for that is in the description. We also took over the self-taught-dev subreddit. So if you want to come hop in the subreddit and ask questions in there, link for that's in the description too. If you want my resume template, the one I used to get my first tech job before I had any tech experience, so it's basically just my resume with my projects on it, look in the description of a way for you to get that as well. And I think that's about it for this one, guys. So I will see you next time. Peace.